In the southern region of Peru, we have Tacna. Tacna is the limit, it borders with Chile. And this is where Tacna is. That's the south of Peru. I'm in Lima right now, but this is the south of Peru. So this is the situation or the case. There's a mining company has been operating an open pit copper since the 60s in the Jorge Basadre province. This is one of the provinces of Tacna, the southern part of Peru. And this mine is the Toquepalana mine, and is one of the most important mines in Peru. Now, the Tacna region, as I said, it borders with Chile, and it's in the area where it's the beginning of the Atacama Desert, the driest desert in the world, and this condition generates limitations in the use of water resources for daily activities and production. However, despite this water stress, this crisis of water, the population in this area is mainly dedicated to agriculture and livestock. So you can see here, this is the mining project, the open pit, and this is Candarave up here. Candarave, what's Candarave? I will go there. So Jorge Basadre province is where the mining activity is located, and by the northeast is the Candarave province. In the Candarave province, there's no mining activity carried out. However, the mining company uses the water that it takes from the Locumba Basin to carry out its activities. So the mining company takes the water mainly from this other province where there's no mining activity. So in Jorge Basadre, you have the mining activity, the open pit, and they get the water from the province next door, kind of thing. But despite this this situation, Candarave is not considered within the area of direct or indirect influence, which is why it's one of the least royalties received in Tacna. That's the situation that we have had for several years. Now, in 2011, the company announced its intention to expand its processing plant and announced this project to double its daily production. So that's a picture of the open pit. Now, it's important to know that the company has all the permits from the Water National Authority for the use of surface and groundwater for its operations. And when the company announced that they were going to expand their processing plant, the executives assured that they did not need to use more water for the expansion of this processing plant, because they said they will use or reuse the water that comes from the tailings. Now, when they announced that they were going to expand this plant, what happened? Well, guess what? The Candarave farmers expressed their concern to the press, asking the company in writing to be informed and to negotiate benefits for this Candarave province and to guarantee or secure the water supply. Because they were saying, well, the mining company is taking our water, we are farmers, where are we going to get our money from, our water from? So even though they get water, they always complain that the good quality water is taken by the company, and they get the lower quality of water. So when they were saying, hey company, we want to talk, give us information, tell us what you are planning to do, how you are going to address our concerns, we should negotiate some benefits, the company refused to dialogue or to engage in dialogue, saying that the Candarave province was not in the project's area of direct influence. Guess what? The social conflict escalated to affect governance. So you see many people in the streets, you have some protesters, the police engage. And in September 2011, protesters rejected a public hearing to present the project's environmental impact assessment. Even though there were some protests, the company continued its normal due diligence, I guess, regular procedure. to get the permits for the expansion of this plant. So they needed to have approved an environmental impact assessment, and within the requirements of the law, they need to have some, not consent, but inform and have the, receive the concerns from the communities, and then the company needs to address those concerns. But the people just reject it, and they have violent clashes with the police, and there were many people wounded. So thousands of citizens from different parts of Tacna, the larger region, the south of Peru, stood in solidarity with the Candarave farmers' demands, and then they start claiming against other mining companies. They start blocking the roads, and things were getting out of hand. And at that time, the local government, the regional authorities, in October 2011, the Tacna authorities convened a dialogue table in which these authorities called to participate the mining company and the national government authorities to address issues of environmental contamination, water resources, and social investments in Tacna. But in February, after a tense dynamic of positional bargaining, interaction, very confrontational negotiations between the parties, the representatives of Tacna, the guys who convened this dialogue, reject the offer of the national government, and the dialogue with the Prime Minister's office was suspended. So the dialogue fell apart. That was October 2011. Now, in August 2012, we have a new Prime Minister, new officials, and a new approach to dialogue was decided to implement it. So it was decided to form the dialogue table to address, this was the kind of the formal name, the dialogue table to address the water, environmental, and development proposals in the province of Candarave in Tacna. You see, more people were engaged. So with the participation of different sectors, mining and energy ministry, environmental ministry, local authorities, and now they engage grassroots social organizations, farmers organizations. So it was more inclusive, if you want, this dialogue table. So after several months, in January 2013, the parties reached an agreement. And a fund for development, so money for development, it was $73 million that the company was going to contribute with. $43 million to construct, to build water infrastructure, and $3 million to carry out water studies in the Locumba River Basin. And the terms of reference of the water study will be jointly developed. And also the company promised, or compromise, that they will not apply for any additional licenses, like water licenses, to use surface or ground water, or underground water. So all this kind of change of way to address the dialogue, and the result of this dialogue, which was, okay, you have all this money for development projects, water money for water infrastructure, and then they said, but before you do the water infrastructure and decide what to do and where to do it, you need to have these water studies. And that was kind of the key in this process, because the consultants and supervisors who did this study was jointly selected by the parties at the dialogue table. So even the terms of reference were jointly developed and approved by ANA, which is the Water National Authority, the Candarave Municipality, the mayor, and the Candarave Irrigation Users Board. So during this dialogue table in September 2013, they developed the terms of reference to do the water studies. And in July 2014, the parties jointly appointed the consulting firm and the supervising firm that they carry out the water consortium, the water study, which was Consorcio Rio Locumba, and a company, supervising company that is called Suez. And I was working at that time, or giving some consulting with this Suez company to do the supervising of the work that the Consorcio Rio Locumba was doing, which was the water, implementing the water study. So we were kind of telling them how to do the water study. So between July 2014 and December 2015, the consulting firm implemented the water study and developed the hydraulic plan and the basin management plan as a result of this water study. So they needed to identify how much water you have, underground, surface water, and then what are we going to do with the water? So they developed this basin management plan. So finally, in August 2017, the Water National Authority approved the water study and the hydraulic plan and the basin management plan. So the key of this process was a participatory process. The key for this dialogue, besides this new approach to engage local communities or engage local communities, was the way how this water study and the plans were developed. So we use a joint fact-finding approach, and it was a very participatory process to generate credible information. As you can imagine, local communities normally do not believe or do not trust neither companies nor governments. So that's why they wanted to have somebody, a third party, to do this water study. And even though we have a third party, the consulting firm, the community were saying, well, in addition to that, we want a supervising company that supervises the consulting firm. So we want a third party that supervises the third party that we're hiring to do this water study. So this water study has 4 phases: a preliminary activity and a plan of communication. They were going to inform to local communities on all the basin, was the Candarave province, also the Jorge Basadre province, and another province. Because the Locumba River goes through all these 3 provinces. So they did a communication plan. They informed what they were going to do. We are going to do our study, and what's the purpose of doing this? So they explained. Then they start doing this diagnosis of management of water resources. So they need to identify first from desk work and then field work. And the field work was done with the local community. So they explained what they were going to do, and then they did it. People participate, even looking at when they were doing the drillings and all that. So after all, they pick up all this information, they gather all this information. The consultants were identifying the study, they were identifying viable or possible solutions or alternatives to cover this water deficit. And finally, the hydraulic and basin management plan was developed based on the problems and the concerns that the local communities have. So this water study had 2 different components: a social component, constant participation of people, authorities, and the Candarave users boards and local leaders, and the technical component that was water balance and review of all these prior technical information, and then the technical component from the field work to explore the current hydrological, hydrogeological, and hydrometeorological and hydraulic current situation. So the purpose was to secure the water in the province of Candarave and Jorge Basadre. So we needed to know for sure what water resources we have on the surface and underground. And at the end, when we have these these plans that were developed after the study, we also went back to the communities we explain what were the problems that we listened to them, and then how we implemented solutions based on their concerns. And as we prioritize their concerns, we also need to prioritize their solutions from their views. So we have different workshops in all over the place. So this was just kind of the final segment of the presenting the plan. So the technical, scientific component, the social component, as I mentioned, for the study, we did some desk work and review information available about water since 1950 till 2017. So tons of information was reviewed. And then the technical and scientific social field work was to validate the information that we got from that we identified. I'm sorry for the noise, if you can listen. And so this participatory work was done from the beginning of the study, which conclude with the gathering of information from the perspective and experiences of the population. And finally, these plans was a set of solutions to water problems in the basin based on criteria of prioritization and selection of works and interventions. So it's the result of the social and technological or technical scientific component of the diagnosis and of the current situation of water. So the hydraulic and basin management plan includes work and interventions, both regarding quality and quantity of water. So we identify the problems, we generate some solutions, and we develop these plans. And the plans mainly have different components, structurals and non-structurals. And one of the components is we need to do further studies to understand the impact of climate change, because this generates or creates more risks. So finally, the interventions and actions programs to cover, so the content, the final concrete result of these interventions or this plan was to develop these interventions and actions plans to cover the water deficit in the Locumba River basin in short, medium, and long term. So we have from 0 to 5 years, projects and programs between 6 to 10 years, and programs and projects between 11 and 15 years. So that's the story in general, and key 3 learnings that we get from here is from the beginning, or the engagement in the dialogue, is that, of course, we all mediators know we need to listen to understand, not to refute, but most importantly, we need to be able to connect. So we need to connect with others as human beings and address those emotional interests or 5 concerns as Shapiro and Fisher call it. Emotional concerns or emotional interests, which include the need to be appreciated, the need to be valued, the need to be respected, and to have this sense of belonging or affiliation, or do not exclude me. I don't want to be excluded. And the sense of autonomy, which is I don't want to be subject of impositions or, yeah. And the second key learning from this engagement was that generate information jointly with a joint fact-finding process that results in credible and trusting information. So we need to engage all parties as much as we can and as earlier as we can. And in general, for any other type of kind of mining project or the mining cycle, companies, communities, and government are better off if they use a consensus building approach to generate long-term relationships of trust and mutual gains. And this also starts from the beginning, from working on a stakeholder assessment in the area of where you want to work. But this stakeholder assessment is an opportunity to connect with others and to build these relationships of trust. Until the end, when you facilitate a process, and then these conversations and dialogues that are needed, also to monitor the compliance of the agreements. So that's all what I have to share, and thank you from Lima, Peru. That's my little tiny city of 9 million people. Thank you.